If Allah already knows exactly what you need, before you even think to ask for it, what's actually happening when you make dua? Is anything really changing? Or is it just a ritual that makes the person asking feel better, while the outcome was locked in long before the words left their mouth? It's one of the most common objections to prayer in general, not just in Islam. And the Islamic answer to it turns out to be more specific and more interesting than most people expect. Lay the problem out plainly. Allah's knowledge is described in the Quran as complete, nothing hidden from Him, nothing He learns after the fact. If that's true, then asking Him for something can't be about informing Him of anything. He already knew you'd ask, and He already knew what He'd decreed for you before you were even born. So what is the asking actually doing? The core of the Islamic answer is this: dua was never meant to change Allah's knowledge. It was built into His plan as one of the actual causes behind certain outcomes. Not a request submitted after the plan was finished, but a mechanism written into the plan from the very beginning. There's a hadith, reported by Salman al-Farsi, in which the Prophet Muhammad said plainly, "Nothing repels the divine decree except dua." Scholars have unpacked that statement carefully, because on the surface it sounds like dua overrides something Allah already fixed. What it actually describes is closer to this. Allah may decree that a specific hardship will be lifted from a person, and decree in the very same breath that it will be lifted specifically because that person asked. Skip the asking, and the outcome tied to it never arrives. Not because Allah's plan failed, but because the asking was always part of the plan producing that particular outcome. This isn't actually a new or strange idea once you compare it to something far more familiar. Nobody skips a meal reasoning that Allah has already decreed whether they'll be nourished today. Nobody skips medicine for an illness on the logic that recovery is already written. Physical causes, food, medicine, effort, are all treated as real, necessary parts of how decreed outcomes actually happen, without anyone thinking that undermines the idea of a decree at all. Dua sits in exactly the same category. It's a cause, a spiritual one rather than a physical one, but a real cause nonetheless. This is exactly where a serious misconception needs to be corrected directly, because it's actually been used historically to justify abandoning dua altogether. A saying circulated in some circles, attributed to Prophet Ibrahim, claiming that as he was being thrown into the fire, he said something like, "His knowledge of my condition is enough. I don't need to ask him for anything." Respected scholars, including Al-Baghawi, examined this saying and identified it as weak, without a reliable chain, essentially baseless. And it matters that it's false, because the actual historically reported words of Ibrahim in that same moment have him doing the opposite, saying, "There is no God but you, glory be to you, Lord of all the worlds." Active statement of dependence on Allah, not a refusal to ask. Some individuals and groups have used the fabricated version to argue that sincere believers shouldn't bother with dua at all. Mainstream scholarship rejects that position outright, on the grounds that abandoning dua doesn't reflect deeper faith. It actually contradicts the correct understanding of divine decree and gives up what the Quran itself calls one of the most honored acts of worship, because that's the other half of this answer that's easy to miss. Dua was never framed as a pure transaction in the first place. Ask, then receive, like a vending machine. Allah says directly in the Quran, "Call upon me, and I will respond to you." And the Prophet Muhammad described dua itself as the very essence of worship, not merely a tool for getting things, which means the act of asking has value on its own. The humility of admitting you need something outside your own control, the honesty of turning toward Allah instead of pretending you're self-sufficient. That value exists in the moment of asking, regardless of what happens afterward. And what happens afterward is more layered than a simple yes or no. In an authentic hadith recorded in Musnad Ahmad, the Prophet Muhammad described 3 outcomes for any sincere dua that doesn't involve sin or severing family ties. Either it's granted directly, sooner or later, or it's stored as a reward waiting in the next life, or it quietly turns aside a harm equivalent to what was asked for, without the person ever finding out what they were spared from. When the companions heard this, they said they'd increase how much they asked. The Prophet Muhammad told them Allah has even more to give than that. This directly answers a second common misconception, that an unanswered dua means Allah wasn't listening, or that the person wasn't good enough to deserve a response. Neither conclusion holds up against what's actually being described here. A delay might mean the timing isn't right yet. It might mean the specific thing being asked for would actually cause harm the person can't currently see. It might mean the reward is simply being saved for a moment this life can't match. None of these possibilities require abandoning the practice, and none of them mean the request vanished unheard. So why make dua if Allah already knows what you need? Because the asking was never about updating His information. It's about taking your place inside a system where turning toward Allah, honestly and consistently, is itself one of the real causes behind what eventually happens. The same category as eating, working, or seeking treatment, except aimed at the one cause behind all the others. Whatever you're asking for right now, the value of asking doesn't wait for the answer to arrive. It's already there, in the act of turning toward Him instead of somewhere else. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe, dear seeker.